everybody, it's me, Player Negative, and it's a brand new day for Spider-Man, which means Ranting for Vengeance is gonna be yelling off the wall that it's not as good as the Raimi films. Honestly, that guy is just never satisfied. So yeah, today we're talking about his Ranting for Vengeance Spider-Man Brand New Day video. I got to recently watch the movie, let me tell you, it is really good. Spoiler warning! If you are someone who has not seen the video, get out. Watch the movie, then come back. I'll welcome you with open arms. So, with that being said, if you want to watch this but still be spoiled like certain people, you are warned. Anyways, roll the tape!
Going to be some 2-hour video essay or a review of Spider-Man Brand New Day. I haven't watched this generic movie and I do not intend to. And even without having seen it, along with every other new superhero movie, is highlighting the death of criticism. And not only that, but also the lowering of people's standards and how they'll accept anything if it's just anyway decent. And that's the
only a few minutes into the video and you're already in a position where people can disprove you. How pathetic are you? First of all, let's get into the first thing. You didn't even watch the movie, so you don't have any ground to stand on. I did. Second of all, if anything, people have done nothing but voice their criticisms about everything. There have been so much backlash when it comes to shows like Ironheart, the Supergirl movie, or literally any of the bad solo superhero female movies that we have been getting over the past several years. What do you mean people aren't criticizing stuff and just taking what's anyway decent? Also, you're saying it's not as good as the Raimi film, so it doesn't fit your standards. Well, have you considered that not everyone considers your ideals as the best way possible? Also, the fact you overly use the word retarded, please stop. You're not the angry video game nerd. You can't just say a swear word 100 times and people expecting that to be part of your normal vocabulary. Just stop. Also, not everything needs to be comic accurate. I mean, you think Sam Raimi is so comic accurate when there are so many things I could use to debunk that. Like, for instance, do you know in the third movie where we were going to get a very much more comic accurate version of the black suit, but it was scrapped because they wanted their own design and thought the concept of it starting out looking normal, but then him figuring out it was alive later on was an idea made by the Raimi films. In fact, there are a lot of aspects the Raimi films popularized that other superhero and Spider-Man shows took from. If anything, you're dodging the fact that, Secret Wars exists, which completely shatters your notion on how Spider-Man 3 could be anywhere comic accurate, so once again, you have no ground to stand on.
Funniest part, decent isn't the word I'd use to describe any of these movies. This isn't some issue of wokeness or politics. It's instead an issue of quality and whether or not a movie will be remembered in the coming years. And it's been proven time and time again that none of these movies will be remembered. And if you say it day one from the first trailer, people will lose their shit for pointing out the fact that who the fuck is going to be remembering David Corenswet's Superman? Who on planet Earth gave a shit about Fantastic Four? It doesn't matter how many billions a movie makes. Where is the cultural relevance?
Literally anyone would remember these movies. Are you going to forget the fact that James Gunn's Superman was the first time Superman was, comic accurate to any fatigue? Like, are we even going to mention the fact that Henry Cavill's Superman was always dark, brooding, miserable, and a deconstruction of the character as a whole? But no, because that was the version you grew up with, you're going to defend that till the day you die. If anything, James Gunn's Superman opened the possibility of what a more accurate version of the character could be like. Yes, there are problems with the pacing. Yes, there are problems with the fact that he gets beat up in a lot of fights. But at the same time, it feels right. Like, the movie does have issues where he can be overly emotional, but it's not bad, but it's also not a cultural phenomenon. It's just good. Fantastic Four was a good movie, but the only reason why it failed was because Pedro Pascal was Mr. Fantastic, which people have fatigue of him after the Last of Us show flopped. And lastly, the Thunderbolts. Haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to. But honestly, I feel like you're just looking for things to hate on. In my honest opinion, something doesn't have to be a cultural phenomenon to be good. There's a fine line between crap and this is the greatest piece of media of all time. And I feel like so many people just forget about that. Something doesn't have to be perfect and something doesn't have to be trash for it to be interesting. I just think the movies are good. I don't think they're amazing, but I think they're good. That's my honest opinion. I feel like we've lost the whole bad, good, great aspect. Like, everything is either it's the best thing ever or it's the worst thing ever. And honestly, the fact you hadn't even watched the movie, which you made public, is an issue. You also are going to go about how you're mad that a lot of characters were race swapped, which, yes, I will admit, sometimes that's an issue. But other times, if the writing is good, it doesn't really matter. Also, you never mentioned how they made Jimmy Olsen white with red hair again. So, doesn't matter to you when a character is unrace swapped? Or anything? Also, I bet another reason they didn't want to draw from the Spider-Man comics was because, you know, the newer writers keep screwing him over. I mean, everyone already knows about Paul. We don't talk about Paul. But if we're being honest here, you just don't like this movie because it's not what you remember Spider-Man as. It doesn't fit your nostalgic frame. It doesn't have to be comic accurate. It's good if it takes aspects from the comics. And I do agree with you on the whole thing about the montage being a little bit rushed. But in my honest opinion, they're good. I'm sorry if it doesn't fit your fragile little ego, but those movies were good. Not amazing pieces of art, not garbage, just good. When are you going to get that something doesn't have to be revolutionary for it to be interesting? And at this point, I don't know what does reach your standards.
The original Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies are still being remembered to this day. Nobody remembers Spider-Man Homecoming right now, let alone in 25 years' time.
Mr. Madison, what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
And take Spider-Man out of the equation. This can be applied to anything nowadays. Take any new movie, TV show, comic, book, video game, anime, and the first week it comes out, the internet does its job of spreading propaganda like the plague. Either saying it's a masterpiece or saying it's the worst thing ever made. Nobody ever makes a valid criticism, and both sides of the argument are always biased. This
Bringing up the Odyssey, Halo Combat Evolved, and an anime I'd never heard of? Well, this is new territory. First of all, man, Halo Combat Evolved isn't bad or called bad because of propaganda. It was called bad because, number one, 343 basically just took the same game, did an asset flip on it, and just, I don't know, added a prequel campaign mode that ruined everything that made the first game special. Second of all, considering the fact that you don't like women, I felt like you yourself would have been able to criticize that with your own opinion, considering the fact that players found out that women are practically unable to be killed in the game, while men can be knocked down in one hit. Second of all, The Odyssey is a good movie by a lot of people's standards. I myself haven't seen it. I might want to see it one day. But honestly, I feel like you're just mad or just want to find something else to clean up your argument because, again, you haven't seen the movie, so you're just grappling at random controversies to make up for your lack of substance. You want to sound intelligent because you like Marvel a lot and you want things to be a certain way, when in reality, you just can't handle the fact that people are enjoying something that isn't your particular standards. And as for that last anime, I have never seen that anime. I might consider it, but honestly, not everything has to be super accurate. If things have issues, they have issues. There's always more seasons or mock-ups you can do work on, or rewrites or reanimated versions. Like Pokemon did a bunch of reanimated versions of the first few seasons and fixed like pacing and animation issues. So in reality, they could just do the same thing for that. I mean, Dungeon Meshi did the same exact thing, where they did reanimated versions of certain scenes and changed up the shading color to make it look different. So, in my honest opinion, it just sounds like you're drawing straws at this point. The movie was about Spider-Man Brand New Day. That's what the thumbnail pointed at. So, the fact you're not even talking about it and you're just mentioning the overall issues with superhero movies and entertainment media in general, without going into depth on why they are, just tells me more about you than I need to know. I mean, the real-life fake wizard was able to beat your argument several times over and talk to people with way more depth and intelligence and was generally respectful to people. You come at people with anger and tell them that they're stupid for not liking the things you like. So maybe check your ego, you retard. And
argument is proven exactly with the brand new Halo game. First, cocked reviews from channels like G-Man Lives were saying that the game was a masterpiece and that it was better than the original somehow. First thing I thought, as anybody with a brain would think, is how the fuck does some brand new Unreal Engine piece of garbage beat the original masterpiece? And the answer to that question is it doesn't, and those people are lying. And it's just now that people are turning around and making videos saying how much of a piece of slop it is, but for that first week, it was the best video game that ever hit Earth.
First of all, people right out the gate called the game bad. The only group of people who called the game good was Halo Studios, aka 343, and mostly PlayStation players who just got the game on PlayStation and PC for the first time, and because they never experienced the original Halo games, that's why they had that misleading sense of guidance. So, no, it's not some whole let's hype something up because it's popular and then trash on it because it's popular. It's due to the perspectives of each individual. Also, what does this have to do with Brand New Day? Like, the video, your thumbnail, and everything was about Brand New Day, but now you're just grasping at anything because you haven't seen the movie. I will admit you are right about certain mischaracterization, but I would argue that some aspects are slightly better. But Jean Grey, yes, I will agree, she's still kind of a jerk, and honestly, I think she was always kind of a bad character from the start. I mean, even when she wasn't doing a bunch of messed up stuff with her abilities, in the comics, she's done some controversial things. And modern times are much worse, like the time she gaslit Iceman into thinking he was gay. And that's like the least horrible thing she does. But I'm not going to go into that because I'm not the Marvel guy for that. I'm not a comic book guy, so I'm not the person who should speak on it. I will, however, speak on the fact that you're bringing such broad accusations without pulling up any evidence that I just gotta ask you.
Why don't you back it up with a source? My source is that I made it the fuck up.
And the same goes with Spider-Man Brand New Day. You have people on the left, the right, people in the middle saying it's the best thing ever created. The left-wingers that adore anything that agrees with their worldview are obviously going to think it's a 10 out of 10. How could they not love this? It took the classic Ditko objectivist hero Peter Parker and turned him into a retard, and every single supporting character in his universe is a race swap bastardized version of the character. Frank Castle, Mary Jane Watson, Ned Leeds, Jean the Wolf, Jean Grey. All of these characters are either race swapped or just don't act like the characters.
Boy, if you don't just shut up, I'm just tired of hearing your nonsense. I am so sick of this idea where you have to say, well, it's not comic accurate, it's not the way Spider-Man should be. Literally, all the newer movies have shown that you can write Spider-Man without being miserable, and the way you view it, for it to be good. People like this movie because it basically gave a good message. You don't have to deal with your feelings alone. Not to mention, it was the progression of seeing Tom Holland's Spider-Man. People hated him back in 2019 for a bunch of dumb reasons, but later on they started to understand that they wanted to do something different. Uncle Ben has died at least 3 or 4 times in every form of Spider-Man media. But the reality is that when you do something one too many times, it gets stale after a while. I mean, look at Pokemon, if we're going off this logic. So I honestly like Tom Holland, because they did something different for once. They chose to take the concept of Spider-Man and build upon the parts that get neglected because so many people want the same thing over and over again. I bet you if we changed nothing about the movie, but we made it where it's Tobey Maguire Spider-Man instead of Tom Holland, you would be calling each of these films the best thing since sliced bread. But you're not willing to admit that. Also, if we're going to view things with this comic accuracy perspective or lens of logic you love to point at, we could actually basically deconstruct the first Spider-Man trilogy because there's a lot of comic inaccuracies. I mean, the very concept of organic webs was because of the fact that the writers didn't think a kid should be that smart to design something like that, which is where the main problem came in. Not to mention, certain aspects of Tobey Maguire were the things that popularized a lot of aspects that the comics didn't build on until much later, like the concept of the symbiote coming from space and latching onto him instead of the Secret Wars story, which a lot of people are saying that in Secret Wars and Doomsday, Spider-Man Tom Holland is actually going to get the Venom symbiote that way, which feels a lot more comic accurate to what you're saying for Tobey Maguire or Tom Holland or Andrew Garfield. In my honest opinion, it just looks like you're throwing stones while you're wearing a blindfold in a glass house. Because, again, you only care for what you grew up with, and you don't like the idea that there are other options. Now, I will admit, every remake is not perfect, or every continuation of a story does have its flaws. Star Wars trilogy was bad. A lot of Phase 3 or 4 was bad. Like, a lot of aspects were bad. But Spider-Man was the exception to a lot of the bad Marvel movies that came out today. And people really started to warm up with Tom Holland because it was an interesting story with the same character, but taking a different twist on things. I'm not saying you should throw away continuity entirely, but what I am saying is that when you have the opportunity to take something people know and do something new with it, you should take it. But make sure it's something people can find interesting and likable. You don't like Miles Morales because he's, well, you know, I'm not going to say, oh, who am I kidding? I'm just going to say, you don't like Miles Morales because he's black and because he doesn't follow the standard Spider-Man scheme, which is literally what the whole movie is about. The fact that Miles doesn't follow the concept of being like Spider-Man the way that people assume is the right way. And the same thing applies for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. He learns to find the balance and actually have a little bit of enjoyment in his life on top of being miserable, being Spider-Man 24/7. So whenever I hear you say this, it's just so annoying. And then you bring up the side characters. Ned Leeds is literally better than every version of live-action Harry Osborn. Because every time, they're either not even close friends, or they're just bad friends in general. At least Ned backs up Peter, tries to help him, understands the value of his secret, and isn't treating him like a jerk. Not to mention, Mary Jane isn't in this movie. The MJ that Tom Holland's Spider-Man interacts with is actually Michelle Jones, a completely separate person. So if they wanted to fit your little idea of how things should be, they could just retcon it that Tom Holland meets a person who just so happens to look like Mary Jane and is named Mary Jane because, again, in the end of Spider-Man Brand New Day, and big spoilers, even when Peter tells her up front, she doesn't want to be with him because she doesn't remember anything and feels like she was violated for having her memories taken away. Which, you know, is perfectly understandable. Which is another thing about this version of MJ that I actually like. You see, in the comics and a lot of the live-action movies that you like, Mary Jane Watson is kind of a jerk. I mean, she's constantly self-entitled, she acts like Peter's problems don't matter, and she constantly gaslights him and demeans everything he deals with. Not to mention, if we're going to take that upside-down kiss in the rain from Spider-Man 1, she literally takes it in context as cheating on 3 separate guys. So, honestly, I would prefer the Michelle Jones over Mary Jane Watson any other day because they don't pull this stupid crap. Also, I don't think they wanted to pull from the comics because more modern Spider-Man comics have just been worse and worse. Spider-Man's true villain isn't the Green Goblin, isn't Sandman, it isn't even Paul, and I'm pretty sure a good majority of us remember Paul. It's the Marvel editorial because they don't know how to write him as good as he should be. And the problem is that those types of writers suffer from the same issues you had, where they basically didn't want Spider-Man to expand, grow, or develop past the main stories he's always been through. And that's where the annoying part is. A lot of people hated the fact that they retconned Spider-Man's marriage and the whole thing when it came to Spider-Man One More Day because it was just written by a bunch of writers who saw a good ending for Peter Parker as a problem, which pissed off a lot of readers. So when you say stuff like this, the reason you get so much backlash is because a majority of the fandom of people who read Spider-Man, enjoy the movies, and any other form of content, hate the fact that they have to put up with the crap that writers and fans like you constantly believe should be the right way, when, honestly, some stories should be allowed to end. I think this version of Spider-Man can get that fair shake. Also, let's get off the Band-Aid real quick. You never watched the movie, so you don't know anything. Which makes me question why you even made this video in the first place.
films. That's besides the point. I don't really care about this movie. I don't even feel like talking about it. Because it's just so plain as day that this movie is nothing. It's not as good as the Raimi movies, and it's definitely nowhere near the comics. And if you go over to the anti-woke right-wing side of the internet on YouTube or Twitter, what do you get? Well, without naming names, you have these people who have been fighting against this stuff for years, calling out that nobody really cares about propaganda and that you should never bend the knee to these companies who pump out this slop. Doing exactly that and calling this movie a masterpiece. And the funniest part is, it just has to be said how mentally retarded you have to be to do something like this. Every single one of them are pointing out why this movie isn't a masterpiece, but then continuing to say that it's a complete 10 out of 10. So Jean Grey acts nothing like Jean Grey is a terrible casting from one of the biggest pieces of brainwashing that ever hit the planet, Stranger Things. Is apparently a terribly written character. I don't know much about that because, as I said, I haven't seen the movie, but I have read the original Uncanny X-Men, and this doesn't really sound or look like that character.
Oh my goodness. There he goes with his traditional stupid rants. You can hear a comic book? Oh my goodness. I swear. No one is retarded in this entire instance except for you. Not to mention, you keep on comparing stuff to the Golden Age comics that no longer influence the movies. If anything, it's more the Silver Age or any other era of comics that people look to for accuracy or reference. So please stop. You are just the Harmon Smith of superhero comic books. I bet you only watched No Way Home just because Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was in that movie. Honestly, I'm just tired of you. Nothing pleases you, and you are just such a pain to deal with.
I don't really assign myself to either of the two sides, but if you look at the anti-woke side, once again, without naming names, they're celebrating that Tom Holland has now transformed from Spider-Boy into Spider-Man. How it's the most accurate superhero movie ever made, and how close it is to the comics. But all of these people, it has to be said flat out, you're making yourself sound like a moron. So it's the most accurate portrayal of Spider-Man of all time, but it's taken 7 straight movies and almost 10 years for him to start acting like Spider-Man.
No one else ever said it was the most accurate thing of all time. It did draw from a few Spider-Man comics for reference, which I do appreciate, but no one ever said that. Second of all, they wanted to do something different. Something you clearly are not comfortable with because you can't take the fact that some people like this version of Spider-Man and not the Raimi version of Spider-Man, because people have looked back at those movies from a different perspective with a new bird's eye view because they're not glazing it with nostalgia and rose-tinted glasses, and actually come to the conclusion that some aspects of the Holland movies are actually better. Now, I'm not going to dunk on the Sam Raimi trilogy because that was the version I grew up with, but I'm also not going to look at it with blind nostalgia like this guy.
What the fuck is going on here? From Captain America Civil War to Spider-Man No Way Home, he's never acted or looked like Spider-Man, and just because he finally has a red and blue suit and is swinging from webs, you're calling it the most accurate thing ever that basically is the comic books. You're a mental retard who has no spine or backbone.
You should cancel yourself now. Your channel serves zero purpose. You should end your channel now.
All of these people give you 20 reasons as to why the movie is garbage, then say it's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. And it's a 99% guarantee prediction that all of these people in a couple weeks' time are going to be saying that this exact movie was slop and trash. But when you say that day one, everybody loses their minds, calls you a LARPer grifter because they can't come off the internet and are caught up in this echo chamber of calling people a LARPer or spreading one story and no other opinions, never questioning authority or the status quo. Spreading one opinion throughout the entire internet on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, comment sections, interviews, and never allowing any other opinion is just totalitarianism.
That is literally what you are doing. You are telling everyone how to like something and what not to like. You are doing the exact same thing, but you can't take criticism because you would have to admit that you're wrong. Something you clearly cannot do. There's a reason why I called you the Harmon Smith of the comic book world, because you're exactly like how he is, minus the smut books.
And it's what a lot of people claim to fight against. So in a couple months' time, when everybody turns around and says that Spider-Man Brand New Day was actually garbage and the original Raimi movies are better than it, as nowhere near the comic books on the level of quality and storytelling and writing, I'm not really going to give a shit, and all of these people are morons who never had the spine to point it out.
Then why did you make the video, then? If this movie doesn't matter to you, why did you not see it and decide to make a video on it? Oh my goodness, you're the most annoying person in the world. First of all, people have voiced nothing but criticisms to all the bad shows. The reason why this show or movie is good is because it actually was written well. This movie was Marvel's last standing hope because most of the other Spider-Man and Marvel movies were just plain bad. And it's not like people are stupid. The general audience is starting to wisen up and see the cracks and the holes with everything. So whenever I hear you talk about this, you're late to the party, man. Not to mention when you call everyone a spineless retard. Have you looked in a mirror lately? Dude, you look like a shriveling chicken bone. Also, I noticed your mouth movement was off in the editing. Fix that. Oh my goodness, you are just the most tone-deaf Marvel fan I have ever heard. You are annoying, pretentious, and you are so tone-deaf. Everyone else has already caught up on these issues and pointing them out. Spider-Man Brand New Day is a good movie, and you didn't even watch it. I'm just going to stop the video right here because, honestly, for the next several hours, he's not even going to talk about Marvel. He's just going to talk about something completely unrelated and talk about how an anime is not as good as the manga. Which, again, little bit different comparisons considering anime artists work way harder than Western animation artists because they actually have respect for the medium and because they get paid less. But we're not going to get into that. I hope you all enjoy this video. See you later, and as a word for ranting for vengeance, you should cancel your channel now.